Hey everybody, it's Angie and welcome to Hot and Flashy. In today's video, we are going to be putting the new concealer from Too Faced to the test to see how it performs on more mature skin. So this is the new Too Faced Born This Way Multi-Use Sculpting Concealer. It retails for $29 for a half an ounce. It's supposed to be a hydrating, full coverage, weightless concealer with up to 12 hours of wear that's also photo friendly and flashback free. So that sounds great. It's getting a ton of really great reviews on YouTube, but mainly from people who are a lot younger and don't actually have any wrinkles under their eyes. And so we're going to test it on skin with wrinkles today. So here's the package. It is a whopper of a package, and as you can see behind me, this was sent in PR along with all the other shades. There are 20 shades. I don't have it on yet. We're going to do one more test with it. I have tested it for 3 days already. So today I'm going to be using my Lancome Evasarin, which is my holy grail concealer. I know everyone else is pinning it against the Tarte Shape Tape. That's not my holy grail. It came in third in my testing. It is good, but on mature skin, it's just a little bit too drying and it accentuates the wrinkles a little bit too much. So this is going to be almost like a Foundation Friday where I do 2 or 3 days of testing, bring in the footage, show you how it wore, and then at the end we will wrap it up. So I hope you like these kind of videos. If you do, give them a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for very thorough reviews on very mature skin. And let's get started. All right, so this guy does have a diamond shaped doe foot applicator, which if you've watched other reviews on it, you've seen other people like put a ton of it on. That's not how I apply concealer. Once you get to be over 50, it's definitely a less is more game. So I always take my concealer, I put it on the back of my hand because you always get out way too much. And then I have this tiny little Sephora lip brush that I use to apply it with. So let me come in closer, we'll apply the concealers. Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. I wanted to put on a primer because one of the previous days that I tested it, it worked a little bit better with a primer underneath. So let me go get that and then we will really start putting this to the test. The primer that I'm using is the Laura Mercier Foundation Primer. This is the original. I don't know why I had just used it the first day that I tried this, and it actually made it perform better than itself. Like I used it under one eye, and it made it go on smoother. It made it wear a little bit better. So we will go ahead and do that. And then I'm just going to use my fingers to apply because on day one of testing this, the fingers worked better than the sponge. I do a triangle shape, but I just do a little triangle at the inner corner. And then I just use my finger to spread that across underneath my eye and to blend it in with little tapping motions. And you want to be really gentle when you tap, because if you like press towards the inner corner of your eye, you will make those little diagonal wrinkles set into your concealer while you're applying it. All right, now we're going to go in with the Lancome on the other eye. I wear this in light bisque. So I'm just going to do the same thing, put a tiny dab on the back of my hand, and clean off the brush, and make that same little triangle. Okay, I think from a distance they're both brightening, they're both reflecting a little bit of light. They both are a little too luminous for me, so I am going to set them both. I'm going to use IT Cosmetics Bye Bye Pores Powder. And just press a little bit into the inner corner with the brush. All right, let me go ahead and finish up the rest of my makeup. I'm using the Urban Decay Sin palette, and then I'll go over all the other days, and then we'll come back in a little while to check in on this. All right, so let's jump in my magic time machine and go back to the first time that I used it. I used the sponge on one side, fingers on the other, and I also used the Laura Mercier primer. I like the finger and primer side much, much better than the sponge. It went on more opaque, it went on smoother. It looked patchy on the sponge and no primer side where I had applied 2 coats and it still wasn't opaque. So I went in using more of it. I used my finger to just tap it in and blend it, and then I got the coverage that I was was expecting out of it, and it looked pretty nice. It has definitely a luminous finish, so I ended up having to set this every time because I would never wear it without setting powder, so I couldn't really do that flashback friendly test. Sorry to say, that's the one thing you won't be getting in this review. So yeah, so when it was just applied, it looked nice and smooth and opaque, and I really, really liked it and was really impressed with it. I came back in for a 3-hour check-in on it, and sadly, it was creased and settled into my under eye wrinkles under both eyes, but the eye with the primer looked much better than the eye without the primer. It looked patchy on the sponge and no primer side. At the 8-hour check-in, the eye without the primer was looking much worse than the eye with the primer. It looked scaly, it was completely worn off, and of course it hadn't gotten any better where it had settled into wrinkles earlier. It was still settled into wrinkles. On the side with the primer, it looked slightly better. It was slightly less worn off, slightly less patchy, slightly less broken up and scaly, but it still had settled into wrinkles. So yeah, day one, I wasn't really impressed. I wasn't jumping up and down for joy over this stuff, and I was kind of like, oh gosh, another, like there's so much hype around this launch. Why is it so hyped? And I'm sure that if you have young skin with no wrinkles, it probably looks nice. But anyway, that was the end of day one. So for day two, I tried it against a new concealer that I had worn in a video a couple of weeks ago, and when I put it on, I was like, oh my God, you guys, this concealer, it's so beautiful, it's so smooth, it's so everything. And I think probably a lot of people ran out and bought it, and it was the L'Oreal True Match Super Blendable Multi-Use Concealer, another multi-use concealer. They are trying to sell you lots of colors so that you use it all over your face. I was so high on this the first day that I tried it in that video. I was like, oh my God, so I have to try it against other things. So I decided, well, what the heck, I bet it's gonna beat the pants off the Born This Way, and here's what happened. I didn't use a primer. I wanted to see how they fared on their own in case this one was like amazing just on its own. I'm gonna start by using Too Faced Born This Way under this eye, and I'm gonna use the L'Oreal True Match under this eye, but I have to mix two colors together to get it to match this guy. I applied both with my fingers, and I set them both with IT Cosmetics setting powder. All right, so when they were first applied, the Born This Way and the L'Oreal concealer looked pretty much identical. The colors were the same. They had the same smooth, beautiful coverage, very opaque, not settling into any wrinkles, just gorgeous. So I was very happy with both of these side by side. I was like, oh my God, I cannot tell the difference. So then I went ahead and decided to use the Born This Way multi-use sculpting concealer to sculpt my face up to do my highlighting and my contouring. I thought the diamond applicator was actually pretty convenient for using it for highlighting because it's nice and small, and so I could really control where I was putting the concealer. I always have trouble getting my foundation to stick and last around my nose, like around my nostrils or above my eyebrows and on my chin. So I went in with the shade Almond down my nose and on those spots and blended it out with a sponge. Then I used the shade Sand to try to do the contouring, and that was way too light. So then I bumped up to Mocha. So if you are looking to use these for highlight and contour, I would definitely just go like 2 or 3 shades lighter for the highlight, but you're going to need to go 5 or 6 shades darker for the contour. I feel like using this around the face, it's a little bit stiff, and so it doesn't blend quite as easily as I would like it to with the sponge. And I switched to using my favorite contouring brush, which is from Real Techniques. It is their foundation paddle brush, and I love this for blending out contour. After that, it seemed to blend out really great with the brush. I liked, how it contoured. I didn't like the color of the contour. For me, it was just too orangey and a little bit too warm, but it did look nice. It did blend in with the rest of my makeup very nicely. And I did try to contour my nose with it. It was way too orange for my nose, so my nose looks like a freaky orange mess, so won't make that mistake again. This, for me, like using this as a contour, I don't know. I much prefer the Nyx Wonder Stick, which is much less expensive. You can pick one of these up for like 10 or 15 bucks. It's a great universal shade. It's not too orange, and you don't get as much, but I have these and they last absolutely forever. So I don't really think there's a need to buy this in every shade to do your contouring and your highlighting with, and we will see how it wears in a sec. All right, we're 3 hours in with the under eye concealer comparison, and good news for the Too Faced people. The Too Faced side looks way, way better. I don't know how this was so good the first time I used it, but it's not today. So this is the Too Faced side. As you can see, there is a tiny bit of those diagonal wrinkles that it's settled in, but it's not too bad. It didn't hold up to sunglasses pads though, but you know, really what does? And it's not too bad out here either. And then this is the L'Oreal side, and as you can see, that is very wrinkled and very creased. All right, it's time for the 8-hour check-in on the concealers. At 3 hours, this L'Oreal side was definitely looking worse than the Too Faced side, but at 8 hours, the playing field has leveled. They both look about the same. They have both settled into wrinkles. They have both come off at the inner corner. So not getting 8 hours of wear out of either of them. I don't feel like either of them were really drying per se, so that was a good thing. So you can see at the inner corner, it's a bit worn off there. It's a little scaly and patchy around there, and it is settled into my little wrinkles out here. And over on this side, it's a slightly more worn off here than here, but it is settled into these wrinkles down here as well. So for me, they're about the same at this point. And as far as the rest of the Too Faced, this seems to be pretty well still on my nose down the middle, so that's pretty good. But not, you know, this part in here, it's gotten shiny, it's worn off, so it doesn't look great in there. Forehead is pretty worn off. Chin is pretty worn off though. The contour was still in place, although that's what I wanted to wear off because it was so weirdly orange and my nose looked like the nose of a pumpkin. So the one I wanted to wear off didn't, the one I didn't want to wear off did, so that was a bummer. The third day of testing was the Too Faced against my Lancome, but I did apply them with the sponge, and so this one didn't go on very well. It was a little patchy at the inner corner. This one does apply very nicely with the sponge, and so it wasn't patchy. So it really was kind of an unfair day that day, and so I'm going to retest it here today. So, all right, you guys, I am back for the 3-hour check-in on the concealers. Let's zoom in on this little situation I have going on here right now, and you will see why after only 3 hours, the Lancome is in the lead. I will come back and do an 8-hour check-in though. It's not over yet. Lancome side, smooth, no creasing, still in place, nice and opaque. Moving over to the Too Faced side. Starting to get those diagonal lines in there, starting to settle in the creases down here. Just making my eye area look quite a bit older, quite a bit more wrinkly. I'll see you in another 5 hours. Hey everybody, I am back. It's time for the 8-hour check-in. It is now 10:49, almost 11 o'clock at night. So let's check in on the concealers. I have bad news for the Too Faced side. It does not look good. This side of my under eye area looks so much older. It has settled into all my wrinkles, really accentuating them. It's kind of cracked on the surface. So I have diagonal lines in here, and then I have it settled into wrinkles here, which is really accentuating my wrinkles, making them look bigger, making my under eye area look quite a bit more aged. I'm getting that patchy kind of scaly look at the inner corner. The Lancome side though, I am much more happy to report is still smooth. It hasn't settled into any wrinkles, and it hasn't given me very much of the diagonal lines at the inner corner. What they have in common is that both of them don't feel drying at all as far as being moisturizing. They both feel non-drying to me. But as far as, you know, looking smooth and making my under eye area look great, I give the win hands down to the Lancome concealer. There's a reason this has been my holy grail for years, is because it just works so well. If you're going to buy a concealer because you need one to not settle into your wrinkles, then get the Lancome, definitely. So that is my review on the Too Faced. I end up recommending the Lancome, and that's the way it happens in these things. Oh well, what are you gonna do? But yeah, after 4 days of testing that, it really didn't wear well on any of the days. It settled into my wrinkles on all of the days. Even when it beat another concealer, it only did it marginally, but it still settled, it still cracked, it still didn't look good. So, you know, whether I tried it with fingers, sponge, with primer, without primer, it always settled, it always cracked, it always made my under eye area look older, and that is not what I'm looking for out of a concealer. So I'm going to stick with the Lancome. Well, that's it for the video for today, everybody. I sure hope you found it helpful and informative. If you did, give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. As always, I thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate your watching. So have a great day, and I will see you in the next video. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.